Well, Jack, there's a lot of talk about milk on this season of Survivor 48. And just like a cool glass of milk left out in the sun, I think this season is starting to spoil a bit. We started off great. The pre-merge this season was some of the best episodes of the new era, but I feel like the last 3 weeks have been so straightforward in terms of their votes and so obvious in terms of their eliminations. We had Charity going at Final 13, then Cedric and Say going out in the split tribal, and now it's a straight up vote against Chrissy. So I'm a little bit disappointed with this season, but welcome into Survivor Analytics. My name is Clyde. I'm the true expert. With me as always is Jack. Jack, how are you feeling about this point in the season?
I'm the voice of the people. Don't forget that. What's up, party people?
Yeah.
Listen, Chrissy was on my fantasy team, so I am a little biased. This season, there feels like there's a shift, and Chrissy was like, oh gosh, see, this is where I should be bringing my expertise. There was somebody in Greek mythology who was cursed with prophecy. I think it was Cassandra. No one would listen to her. Yes, Cassandra was a Trojan priestess dedicated to the god Apollo, fated by him to utter true prophecies but never to be believed, a daughter of King Priam and a younger sister of Hector from the Trojan War. So Chrissy is kind of the Cassandra, right? She's saying what the audience is feeling, what we're feeling, which is, hey, these meat boys are running the game. And everyone else is like, Chrissy, you're talking too much. We're going to vote you out.
Yeah.
And I love a lot of these meat boys. But it felt like this episode was really trying to manufacture the tension. We'll see as the numbers continue to squeeze. But let me ask you this. How many players have to be left in the game before this gets interesting again? If it gets down to 6, we're at 9, right? 3 more weeks of this alliance running the group. Where's the line where you're like, I'm going to write this season off?
So I'm not writing the season off, and I don't necessarily think that straightforward votes equate to boring votes. I think seasons like Survivor 45, the one that D won, that's a game where the Reba 4 Alliance, Austin, D, Drew, Julie, they run the show in the post-merge. But there was at least a lot of adversity that they faced along the way. And because of that, the episodes were still entertaining because there was this hope that maybe the game will flip against the Rebas. But I think what distinguishes 45 from 48 is that the players outside the milky majority on 48 are buried in the edit to the point where I have like almost no confidence in people like Star or people like Mary flipping the game against the milky majority here. So
No.
I'm expecting this group to just kind of steamroll for the next episode or two. The only hope of things really shaking up, well, there's 2 hopes. One of them is Kyle and Camilla, the undercover duo. And the other hope of shaking up the game is David just self-imploding. But outside that, I think we could just be looking towards what we call in Survivor a pagonging, where one majority alliance just picks off all the bottom feeders.
I see what you're saying, and I see it too. It feels like David is the key here. David is the key to this season getting interesting again, in that we need what I talked about last week to happen, which is Kyle and Camilla's whispers breaking him down. Because Kyle and Camilla's whisper campaign, I said this last week, and I think it's a prediction of mine that seems to be bearing fruit, is they've put the wedge between David and Shaheen. And I think that's going to continue to grow. What we saw this week was Shaheen being played up as this massive strategic threat who's never targeted in this episode, right? His name barely comes up, and I mean, his name is written down, but it doesn't really count. But should we jump in? Should we start talking about the episode? Because there's a lot here.
Yeah, there's a lot to get through. So we can start post-tribal council. Everyone's walking back to camp, and Chrissy, your former winner pick, I will be excited to hear your new winner prediction at the end of the episode, which I know you haven't thought of yet, so you have time to think about it now.
No, I hadn't thought of it.
Chrissy is immediately in recovery mode. Last week at Tribal, she said that we need to go after all the big threats. And now she's doing damage control. She's going to people like Joe and Eva and saying, I was just kidding. I was just playing it up for the cameras at Tribal.
My bad, guys.
She's doing what she needs to do in this situation, but I also think it's funny that you fast forward to the Tribal Council at the end of this episode, and she does the exact same thing all over again.
Here's the hard part. Here's where I think this season is struggling the most, okay? Oh, gosh, what should I call them? The curds and whey of the season, right? The things that have boiled out of the milky majority. the players who aren't in the mix with the majority. The curds and whey, right? Star, Mitch, Chrissy. That might be it.
Yeah, Camilla. Camilla's not an official member. She's connected to Kyle, but she's not in the milky majority.
But Camilla's playing the game with Kyle, right? Star, Mitch, and Chrissy seem to have absolutely no interest in playing, right? Mitch tries for 45 seconds to make an alliance happen and then just sits around for the rest of the episode.
Disappears the rest of the way.
Star doesn't have a single conversation with anybody. Okay. Chrissy doesn't really have a lot of conversations with anyone except for Kyle after the challenge. That whole passivity is so aggravating. It's so aggravating. So,
see, I don't think they're necessarily passive players. I think they're just undershown in the edit. I bet in reality they're attempting to make moves. They're aligning with people, but the whole season is just so focused on that milky majority in general. And Chrissy is such a weird player to assess on this season for me because she was invisible for like the first half. We barely saw Chrissy at all. And then last week and this week, she's one of the most vocal contestants on the cast, calling out that group of Joe, David, and Eva. So I want to know, like, is there a lot of footage cut that's left on the editing room floor of Chrissy calling out people in every tribal council that she attended, but it just wasn't shown until these 2 latest weeks. So, but that's the update with Chrissy. You mentioned Shaheen earlier. We can talk about him. I'm off the Shaheen bandwagon. I was on it last week, and I'm jumping right off again.
You were heavy on it. And did I have him as my loser?
You had him as the
week?
loser. And I said, I think he was the most likely to win the season. I was Team Joe
you did.
all season. I pivoted off to Shaheen, and now I'm back on Joe. So the Shaheen thing, it was just a phase, Mom. We don't need to worry about it. Because he has a conversation with Joe at the opening of this episode where he says that, I think I trust Kyle and Camilla. They had the chance to take the shot at me last week, and they didn't do it, which is a fair assumption on his part. Like, that's him using the evidence at his disposal. Yeah. But now I just feel like we're really getting set up for Kyle and Camilla pulling the votes together against him. I think the only way that Shaheen doesn't fall apart and get taken out by those two is not through the active strategic work of Shaheen himself. I could see a world where he snakes his way to the end, not because he realizes that they're going after him, but because David is becoming such a big threat and becoming so vocal that they decide to flip against David instead.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kyle and Camilla's move here, Kyle very openly, both of them very openly recognize Shaheen as a threat, but they also recognize David as this massive target. And he is. He's a big physical threat. He's got this alliance with Mary that came out of nowhere, by the way. All of a sudden, they're ride or die. Like, that, I don't know where that came from, but
they were together in the swap section of the game. Like, they totally could have shown David and Mary connecting there, but we don't see it for like 3 episodes, I would say.
Yeah, they could even give us a flashback to something they didn't show then, and I'd be fine, right? But give us something. And so I think Kyle and Camilla are in a great spot because they can go after either or both of these two with Joe and Eva, Kyle, Camilla, Joe, Eva, and you pull in Mitch, and that's a majority, right?
I just don't think that Joe and Eva would be down for that plan. I think this new majority is very stable in terms of their power. I mentioned this last week, but I said that if Kyle and Camilla want to take the shot at the big physical players, they needed to do it soon, and I think they might have passed up that opportunity.
You think it could be done and we're doomed for a pagonging?
I guess if I had to pick one lane or the other of like dynamic final 9 through final 7 or straightforward for the next 3 rounds, I'd lean more towards the straightforward camp.
Yeah.
You mentioned Mitch I'll throw it out here. Mitch
Yeah.
is pretty invisible this week, but he gets one confessional towards the beginning where he says, I lost Charity, my number one ally. I need to start playing more aggressive. I'm going to get the whole Siva crew back together. Let's get the band back together, like in that episode of Phineas and Ferb.
Phineas and Ferb. Great episode.
Yeah,
All-time episode.
All-time one. That's where they sing, I Ain't Got Rhythm is the drummer. I don't remember the other ones. What was the band's name?
Oh, gosh.
Something? Love Handle?
Love Handle.
Is that what it was? Yeah.
Yes.
I remember these guys.
Oh,
Okay,
my God.
But Mitch is doing his best Love Handle impersonation. He wants to get the band back together, and it never comes to fruition. They actually vote out a SIVA member later at Tribal Council. So
Yeah.
I'm not very good in our different fantasy leagues. I've never won Survivor Fantasy before. But one thing I am great at is finding the zero vote finalist. And I think Mitch is the top contender right now to be the zero vote finalist of the season because he's constantly shown coming up with plans and failing in their execution.
Yeah, I mean, he really does feel absolutely harmless. He doesn't have any alliances. He's going to keep trying, right? He's not going to turn on anybody blatantly. I mean, he voted the right way this week because everybody knew which way to vote, right?
Yeah.
Not because he was looped in on a plan. So I could totally see him being a no-vote finalist. Absolutely. At this point in the episode, we have two things. We have the pairing up for the challenge. We get tree mail that tells the contestants to pair up. And before we go to the challenge, we have a Survivor 50 vote. I didn't get the chance to open it up. Do you have the items being voted on?
Yes. And I'll talk about them at the end of the episode because it's my dishonorable mention.
Okay, we'll save
You have that to look forward to.
Okay. Well, so the pairs for the challenge, shall we go there?
Yeah.
Oh, I've just pulled it up. I'm not going to look at them yet, but oh boy. So the pairs for the challenge: Shaheen and Camilla, David and Mary, Kyle and Chrissy, Eva and Joe, shocker, Star and Mitch. This is another moment where I would like to hear from Star, not only because she's on my fantasy team and that would get me points, but because Star's whole narrative is, why won't they let me play, right? Why am I being picked last or benched, right?
I thought it was Camilla that thought she was going to get picked last.
Well, Camilla thinks she's going to get picked last, but Star has this whole thing of like getting benched, right? In the pre-merge, she was
benched in the basketball
compete.
challenge.
Exactly. And so this is a moment where I would have liked to hear from Star and hear her go, like, man, why am I stuck with Mitch, right? Or, hey, awesome, I'm with Mitch. He's a great shooter, right? He's got some serious physical abilities that are kind of under wraps. We don't hear anything from them. Honestly, at a certain point, as this challenge was being explained, I forgot there were 10 people because they are so not in it. The challenge is for both immunity and reward, the reward being a taco bar and chocolate cupcakes. Second week in a row that the reward, by the way, has been build it yourself, because why would Survivor put in any effort?
You need to earn it.
The challenge itself is one of these multi-stage ones where the pairs will be eliminated over time and then it will become an individual challenge. The first stage, crawl through some sand, then dig up some sand for puzzle pieces. Somebody's eliminated there. The next stage, build some stairs, build a bridge. First two teams through, continue on. Finally, the last four people do the classic pole hold. Is there a name for this?
There is. I can look it up. Have we seen this before on the podcast?
We have.
I've seen it on a bunch of seasons.
This is the challenge that I believe Dee absolutely destroyed with her toes.
Oh,
right?
You're
Where
right.
She put her toes in the gap, and we saw way too much of them.
Oh, this is Get a Grip is the name of it. We have covered this before.
We've definitely covered this before.
We've covered this a bunch of times. This was on 45 and 46.
But this time it's part of another challenge. Yippee. So super easy breakdown. This comes down to David and Mary, Joe and Eva in the Get a Grip section. David and Joe both drop very fast. It becomes a Mary versus Eva challenge. Mary drops. Eva wins immunity. Honestly, I love an endurance challenge. This one was pretty mediocre. At the same time, I love Eva. She's my favorite contestant on the season. I love seeing her win. It made me really happy to see that. I don't know, kind of mixed bag. But I forgot to mention the twist of this challenge. The first 2 teams eliminated have to go on a journey. That journey being what we'll talk about next, because Camilla, Mitch, Star, and Shaheen go on the journey. I'm feeling demoralized by this episode. Like, I don't know if you can hear it in our voices, listener. This one feels like it's broken me a little bit. This is a tough episode to feel enthusiastic about because here's the journey. The 4 contestants are playing against each other to put balls in chutes. If you draw 3 balls that are red, you lose, and you lose your vote. Yet another removal of agency for no reason. The only consolation being this one, unlike the other journeys we've seen this season, has a little bit of player agency, right? Because the ball drawing system is taken in turns and contestants can kind of strategize with each other. So how did you feel about this journey? Because you don't like any journey.
I don't like journeys in general, right? I will say this journey gave me a little bit of confidence in the podcast because this entire game straight up comes from Mario Party. It is a Mario Party minigame that was featured in Mario Party 2. You can look up the minigame Honeycomb Havoc. It's quite literally the same thing that they run in this section of the episode, where in Mario Party 2, the players are collecting fruit, and every once in a while, there's a honeycomb that will cause them to lose a life. So you need to pick either 1 or 2 fruit at a time that are moving down this chute. It is nearly identical to what we're talking about this week. And we've been saying it for a year and a half, that these journeys are basically Mario Party games. And it gives me a sense of self-assurance just to know that we were right the whole time.
I mean, it is the exact same game. I'm looking at it now. This is kind of fun. It has a bunch of names in other languages. So it's called Honeycomb Havoc in English. In Japanese, it's called Buzzing Beehive. Italian, it's called Hive Terror. In German, it's called Fruit Basket. Oh, in Russian, it's Strife Hives, which I like. And in Spanish, it's What a Pity of a Honeycomb. So that's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. It's an unneeded part of the episode. And I think my biggest problem with it, beyond taking away players' agency, is the fact that it's putting even more of an emphasis into the physical side of Survivor. Like, I don't think you should be penalized for losing a challenge beyond just not winning immunity. And this week specifically, the cast of Survivor 48 is really buying into this idea that the strongest players are the most deserving. They are the ones who should win. And now production is buying into that philosophy because they're penalizing the weaker physical players. And Eva, who ends up winning the challenge, is later handed a clue to an advantage that we can talk about later. But as far as this journey goes, Star ends up losing her vote. We don't get much insight from Star. It's assumed that she was intending on continuing to work with the Logi players. But at the end of the day, I feel like the Star lost vote didn't have a major impact on the direction of the season. But do you think things would have looked different if Star kept her vote here and someone else lost it?
I don't think it mattered for this particular episode at all. Say Shaheen loses his vote. Maybe the narrative shifts and they go, hey, we can take him out. Honestly, if everything was the same and Chrissy still talked like she did at Tribal, nothing would change.
Yeah,
that's the kicker, right? Chrissy's name was already out there, but nothing mattered before Tribal because of how much she talks, right? That's the problem. I don't think it matters. Honestly, this whole episode felt futile because it just comes down to Tribal and Chrissy's mistake, right? And that's kind of cynical because, we just watched this whole episode. You listeners watched it and are listening to this episode. But yeah, I don't think it matters. Nothing matters.
Man, okay. So with that in mind, we can go to the taco group.
Animal shot.
Oh, what's the animal shot?
It's a bat eating a mango.
Symbolizing
the tacos they're about to eat.
Okay, that's a bad one. I'd say that's a D to F tier animal shot. I might start keeping my own tier list of the animal shots.
That's for Survivor Analytics. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. The annual Survivor Analytics podcast that we only did one time, I think. Maybe we'll return to it at some point. But I mentioned this earlier. Eva finds an advantage, not an advantage, a clue to an advantage that is rolled up in her bowl of chips. And one thing that's important to note here is that when the players go and sit down for this feast, there are name tags at the 4 separate chairs. So each player has a designated seat with a designated bowl of chips, meaning production saw that Eva won the challenge. And I think they thought, okay, as reward for winning the challenge, not only do you get immunity, but you'll also get this clue.
It says that in the scroll. It says, as a reward for your win.
Yeah, it says your effort in today's challenge has also earned you a secret advantage. What are we doing here?
Yeah, like...
Isn't the award for winning immunity the immunity necklace itself? Like, Eva already cannot receive votes in this tribal council, and on top of it, she's getting this advantage. Like, I thought the entire purpose of advantages and idols in the first place was that it's an opportunity for those players on the bottom, those players who are struggling to gain power in the game. But when you set it up this way, you're just further empowering those people who are already in control.
It makes the show feel more scripted, more controlled. I mean, it is blatant production interference, right? There's no way you can spin this that it's a balanced decision. Oh, the most popular alliance on the show, I think you sent this recently. Joe is the cast member getting the thirst trap edits on TikTok. Joe's the heartthrob of the season. Eva's the absolutely heartwarming success story, right? The two of them combined are a duo to beat. I would watch any TV show they're ever on because I love them both. Hey, let's give them more, right? Eva still has the idol from Star, by the way. So now Eva has that, and she decides, basically, she's going to keep this advantage to herself just to add even more to her arsenal.
And I really respect Eva for that. I think she acquires the clue through some BS, but she makes the most of the opportunity. And I thought when she first opened it that she would immediately run to Joe, and she proved me wrong. So I think this is the first time this season where we've seen Eva really separate herself from Joe, because at some point down the line, a move will need to be made. Either they'll need to turn on each other, or they'll need to do something in the final tribal to prove why they deserve to win over their ally. So this could be Eva's big opportunity in the long run. I have no issue in general with production putting clues to advantages on these rewards. We've seen it a bunch of times on Survivor. I think we saw it in Samoa, but you shouldn't put it in one individual's meal. It should be open to everybody. So that happens with the taco group. The other big thing to note here is that there's a new member in the Strong Players Alliance. Before this week, it was a strong 5. You had Joe, Eva, David, Kyle, and Shaheen. That's your 5, the 5 strongest people on the board.
Yep.
David makes an executive decision and says, it's no longer a strong 5, it's a strong 6. And who is the 6th person we're going to rope in? Potentially the weakest physical player on the cast, in Mary.
Yes.
And hey, by pure coincidence, Mary's one of my closest allies, but we should let her in. Not Camilla.
Yeah.
We shouldn't bring Camilla into the mix, even though Camilla is already tight with Kyle and Joe and Shaheen from the swap section of the game. Like, she's already tight with people in this alliance. She has the inroads. Nah, Camilla doesn't get the invite. We're going to pull in Mary.
I think this is the move that will break up this alliance. There's this game called Buckaroo. Did you ever play Don't Break the Ice or like Icebreakers or whatever? And it was the game where you had to like move, you had to like tap the ice and then it would break and fall.
I don't think so.
It's like that category of board game where it's really just kind of a gadget that they call a board game. But Buckaroo, the premise is you're putting stuff on this horse and at some point it will buck and throw everything off, right? It's a kid's game. Mary is the point at which this alliance gets too heavy and the game is the horse here. The game of Survivor is going to buck off this alliance because it's blatantly stacking the deck for David, right? It's drawing more ire to him. It's pushing Kyle away. I think it's going to push Joe and Eva away, to be honest with you, because I think Joe would rather work with Kyle. I think he's closer with Kyle. This is going to be the beginning of the end, I think, for David. That's my take. I don't think David makes it 2 more weeks.
Oh, I think he makes it 2 more weeks, but I think his chances of winning the season are absolutely shot, especially with what he does at Tribal Council. And then once Mary is in the group, not only is Mary a new member of the Strong Six, she's also the one calling the shots. And she's dead set on voting out Camilla.
I mean, she is right in the mix so fast, and it's the most assertive we've seen almost anybody be all season. I actually really respect this in a lot of ways from Mary because she's been on the bottom for so long. Trying to seize power, right, and take agency like this, I think is great for her. Maybe a little bit too blatant.
Yeah.
Probably a little bit too blatant. But at the same time, she doesn't have much of any threat level, right? And so because she's not super threatening, because we're at a point in the game where you really have to think about threats, I don't hate it. I don't hate what she does, to be honest. For her game, I think it makes sense. I'm talking myself into it.
I agree with her read of going after Camilla, but I think the reasoning behind it is completely misguided. Mary thinks that Camilla and Shaheen are super, super tight. And in order to keep Shaheen tight with their Strong Six alliance, we need to cut his other options. We need to cut Camilla out of the equation. And I think voting out Camilla is a good move, but not because it weakens Shaheen. They're not that close. Like, in reality, if you get rid of Camilla, you're drawing Kyle closer into that group. It's a good read, but we get there through some very flawed logic, I'd say. So that's the taco reward. Do you want to go back to where the tribe reunites, or do you have anything else to say there?
So the first thing here, Eva says she's going to go puke after the reward, and she's actually burping a lot from eating all the tacos. And so it's a legitimate excuse that then just works in her favor, right? But it's pretty funny because she opens the scroll and she's like, nice. And her secret advantage, tomorrow night, the night after Tribal, she has to go sneak out of camp and go like across the island to find some torches. And at this point, it feels like she's going to get another idol. Production can give her whatever they want.
I will say, I have no clue what advantage is on the horizon for Eva, because production's already used a lot of their typical advantages this season. We've seen the extra vote, we've seen the vote block, we've seen the vote steal. Those are kind of your intro to advantages in Survivor. So they might pull something completely out of left field with whatever they introduce next week and give Eva even more power. I wrote down that David leaks the plan to Kyle.
Yeah.
Approaches Kyle after the taco feast and tells him, we're going after Camilla. And all season, the storyline with Kyle and Camilla is that we're an undercover alliance. No one knows about our connection. And it turns out they did a pretty good job at hiding their relationship, because if David knew about it, he wouldn't have told Kyle in the first place.
And this is something I think where we have to acknowledge, I think you, Clyde, Mr. True Expert, said, oh, people know about this alliance. And I said, I don't know. People don't know about this alliance.
I thought people knew about the alliance because they voted together. In that tribal council where Kyle saves himself with an idol and they take Thomas out of the game, Kyle votes with Camilla. I thought that was a clear sign that there's some kind of a working relationship there, but people looked past it.
But in this moment, Kyle is pushing back on Camilla, right? And it's like, no, we shouldn't go Camilla. But he's pushing back in a way where he is still refusing to openly say, Camilla and I are tight. He's still playing it down, but he's at a hard place where he can't really downplay it without feeling like he's hiding something to David, right?
Yeah.
And my question for you at this stage, if you're Kyle and I'm David, and I say, dude, flex, 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 flex. Bro, dap up. We're going Camilla tonight, bro. It's going to be sick. What do? Do you say, no, she's my closest ally? She's my number one? How do you handle this?
See, I think Kyle did the best with the information he had available, because you can't outright tell David, she's my real number one. We need to keep her around. He goes back to some of the evidence. He says, Camilla's voted with us the entire time. She's proven herself as a loyal ally. We need to keep Camilla in this game. And I think Chrissy's just an easier vote for everyone involved.
Yeah.
But David is not hearing that. He's immediately skeptical, and he's asking, well, why don't you want to get rid of Camilla? Are you guys actually a tight alliance? And it seems like David is starting to pick up on the fact that they are a legitimate duo in this game.
No.
You don't think so?
I don't think David is getting a good read on them because we don't get a confessional from David saying, I'm suspecting Kyle my number one. I think David has been pointed in this direction by Mary. Mary said, let's go Camilla. And David said, okay, anything that gets in the way of that, I'm going to treat with suspicion and push back on it from any of our allies in the majority of 6. I don't think he's picking up on it yet, to be honest with you. I really don't.
See, I might be fooled by the next time on, because I think in the preview he says they're a real alliance. Like, maybe I'm just predicting that David comes to that realization, because I feel like David actually has some solid strategic reads in the game. It's just he's so bad at connecting with people and convincing them to go his way.
Well, here's the last thing I do want to highlight. A couple little things before Tribal. Camilla says that David should have just gone to the Olympics because all he wants to do is win challenges with Joe and Eva. Pretty funny.
Yeah.
And we get this breakdown that perfectly illustrates the problem with this season right now. On the beach are the 6 meat boy people, the milky majority. They're all sitting around the boat having their discussion, having their strategy talk, just sitting there deciding how the game will go. Then we cut back to camp, and Star and Mitch are just hanging out. Like, they're just sitting back and relaxing. They don't have any urgency. They don't even seem nervous. I just don't get the lackadaisical energy there at all. But
I kind of get it from Star's perspective, because Star doesn't have a vote. You don't want to play too aggressively like Chrissy later does, paint the target on yourself, and then end up going home. I think when you're in a lost vote situation, you just got to roll with the punches.
That's a very good point. All right, let's go to Tribal. First off, we got to talk about Cedric's outfit here.
Oh,
the most dad outfit he could have worn. I think those were big old chunky New Balances.
Yep.
Khaki shorts with the tucked in polo.
Oh,
spectacular. Chef's kiss.
And to make it even better, the jury bench isn't a full-size jury bench. It seems like they've cut it to a fourth of its original size. So it's only for Cedric right now.
Yeah. It's like they have it in sections and didn't bother bringing in the next section because it would make him look smaller. Where do you want to start here? Because there's a lot of drama and a lot of talking.
This was my favorite part of the episode. I feel like we rarely get a spicy tribal council in the new era. I've said this before, but more often than not, your new era tribal councils are essentially sports press conferences where everyone gives generic answers like, this is a game where you can't trust anybody, and nothing really comes out of it. This was one of the few tribals where I feel like what people said actually had an impact on this vote as well as the direction of the season.
Okay, so let's delineate. Chrissy ended her career. Is there anything else to say about her?
How does she end her career, right? She tells everybody, we got to go after the big threats. She's running the hits again that she said last week in the previous tribal. She calls out Joe and Eva. She calls out the physically strong players, doing what she can considering her position on the bottom. I don't have a major issue with it.
Yeah, I mean, Chrissy is speaking truth to power. She's saying we have to go after these people or they are going to run the game all the way to the end. But I get being frustrated, and maybe she thought, like, I'm going home anyway, so I might as well talk. But when she goes to vote in this tribal, she says, I think I screwed myself in this vote by opening my mouth.
Yeah, and despite that, she doesn't play her shot in the dark. She feels like she's going home, and she just throws a vote on Shaheen, for funsies, I guess.
It feels like she started talking and realized she was too far gone and was like, well, might as well lean in. Maybe someone will listen to me.
So that's the Chrissy side of things, but I think the David side is much more interesting.
Yeah, so let's talk David.
So David pushes back against Chrissy and says it makes sense for the strong guys, the strong people to all work together, which basically tells everyone in the game that there is a strong players alliance. He's owning up to that fact, which is a bad strategic move.
Yes.
And I don't have an issue with David's strategy. I think if you're someone in his archetype, you need to align with the other physical threats as a way of managing your own threat level. You don't want to be the beefiest guy on the beach. You need other people there as shields. So I don't necessarily have an issue with his strategy, but I think everything outside that approach is pretty bad in terms of his treatment of the other contestants, where if you look at within the milky majority, he's kind of an overbearing ally. He's not letting Kyle speak earlier in the episode during that conversation by the boat. And then if you look beyond that alliance, he's actively burning jury votes. He tells Chrissy that you wish you were on a cast where people didn't care about physical strength, but hey, that's not the season that you found yourself on. He's kind of burning her right before he's about to send her out the door. And Camilla pipes up and says, this is some bad jury management that we're watching.
Yes.
And that could be foreshadowing, a final tribal loss for David down the line.
Here's something I will say to that note, because spot on analysis from Camilla. During this scene, because I watched the show pretty fast.
On what time speed this week? 1.5 or 2?
2x.
Does it go higher than 2 or is 2 the max?
Oh, I have a plugin. Here, I'll tell you exactly. It goes up to 16x, and I can customize to the second decimal point.
That is ridiculous. Maybe I'll try that for an immunity challenge. I couldn't do that for the rest of the episode, but
what you pick up when you are watching the show that fast is which faces the camera is on the most, right? Because when you're sitting there watching at normal speed, you're not counting reaction shots. You might notice a couple of them, but you're not keeping track. I assume you're not. You might be.
Other people keep track of like confessional counts and confessional time. I'm not doing that.
Yeah, those people have way too much time on their hands.
Can you believe that?
So when you're normally watching, you're not picking up on the number of reaction shots. But the number of reaction shots, similar to the animal shots, has a implication, right? The editors chose to show those people's reactions because those people are relevant to the season. Eva and David have the overwhelming majority of reaction shots in this tribal council. I mean, I think it's especially notable that Eva is shown so much because she's immune. I think she maybe talks once in this tribal, and it's about winning the challenge. We see her a ton. And then we see David a lot, and we see Joe a lot. I could see those three being the final three at this rate. I think there's a world where that happens.
I could see that. That would be a great final three. I think it would be close between Joe and Eva. I don't think David would have a real shot there, but
yeah, an observation I wanted to make.
But how did you feel about David's comments in the tribal? Because you're pro Meat Boy in general. So were you cheering him on, or were you not a fan of the way he handled this situation?
No, he handled it terribly. You should never be mean to somebody on Survivor. And if you're going to do it when they're not looking and burn their socks. It's terrible jury management, like Camilla says. It's not good relationship building. It's just not a good move. It elevates David's, not his threat level exactly, but his target level. David was already a target, an easy person to consider as a threat in this game because he's huge. Literally. Talking this much adds a toxicity to him where, hey, if Chrissy and Cedric are sitting there at the next tribal and they see me buddy with David, is that going to hurt me if I make it to the end? Chrissy says as she's leaving that like some of you have created an uphill battle for yourselves with the jury, something like that. Jury management is a big theme in this episode. And if I'm Shaheen, if I'm Joe, even if I'm married, to be honest with you, although maybe not, putting some distance between me and David, not a bad idea because you don't want to be associated with that. Hey, too bad the Meat Boys are in charge. If I'm a Meat Boy that's not David, I don't want to be associated with that attitude for the final tribal council.
Yeah, and I think if you're tight with David, yes, you have the potential positive of going to the final tribal with David and beating him in a jury vote. But there's also the negative of people want to weaken David without taking out David himself. Like my prediction for next week is that Mary goes home, that they vote out Mary as a way of cutting David's other options, and now we can drag him to the end. So I think David has a little bit of say energy to him now, where if you're within a certain distance of him, you could get targeted, just like a lot of Say's different allies through the game. I did not write down an epitaph for Chrissy, but I can come up with one on the spot.
Well, what? Wait, sorry, but what's the vote though?
Oh, your final vote. It's a unanimous vote against Chrissy. It's a 8-1. Everyone votes against her. She votes against Shaheen, and then Star doesn't cast a vote. Here's the epitaph. R.I.P. Chrissy, the only lactose intolerant player on this cast. Chrissy was the most vocal person against the Milky Majority, and I do respect it. I think she tried her best.
That's very good. That's very good.
I think she was someone that, was well positioned early on the original Siva tribe, and she got pretty unlucky at the swap. I'm going to pull it up right now, but I feel like a lot of people made in-depth connections in the swap section of the game that paid off in the second half. If you look at Chrissy's swap tribe, who was she with there? She was with Say, Cedric, Bianca, who all went out, and Mitch, who was on the bottom. Like that swap tribe has almost no power in the game. So did Chrissy play the best game of Survivor? No, I think she shot herself in the foot a good number of times. But there was also a couple external factors that played into it as well.
Yeah.
But how did you feel about losing Chrissy? She was your winner pick.
I don't want to complain. I think something that has to change next season is that your winner pick shouldn't just be your first pick in the draft, because that's how she became my winner pick.
I give you the option every year. I text you and I ask, who was your winner pick? And I say, your first round pick was this. Do you want it to be this person? And you say yes.
I don't know if I got that option this time, but maybe I did make that pick. I don't know. I hoped for more from her, and I think that she was underserved in the edit. I think the hard part with this season is there is a very clear focal point in the Milk Majority. I don't know. I mean, I feel bad for her. I think she probably really regrets how she went out. I know I would. This feels like something kind of out of the Bear, right? Where you just have an outburst because you're a hard on your sleeve kind of person. And then you go, oh, I probably shouldn't have said that. She went home because she probably shouldn't have said some stuff. I think she could have survived this week, to be honest with you. Tough to see, but oh well.
So with Chrissy out of the game, you have two people left on your fantasy team. You got Star and Camilla.
I don't have to pick one of them.
You don't have to pick one of them, but you can if you want to stay loyal to the squad.
I don't.
Who is your new winner pick going to be? Will you join me on the Joe bandwagon?
No, I'll tell you what, though. I will join you on that alliance. My winner pick is Eva, because if and when she goes home, which she probably will because she's on Cameo.
Oh, you check the Cameo accounts.
No, I follow her on Instagram.
Oh.
But, I mean, she does it for charity,
Well, that's a good sign then. Maybe she doesn't need the money.
Maybe. I don't know. Listen, I'm a big fan of Eva. I can't not have her as my winner pick next, because if she went home before I got to have her as my winner pick, I'd be sad. So Eva is my winner pick.
Okay. This is your second winner pick of the season. I'm on my third already, so if Joe goes out, I'm done. The Shaheen one wasn't an official winner pick. That was me just going through my emo phase.
Yeah, you locked in Joe. Do you want to do winners and losers?
Yeah. So,
okay.
Winner, speaking of Eva, she is my winner for this week. Do you have the same one?
No, my winner is actually Camilla.
Oh, okay. So I'll give my Eva spiel quick. Things are looking great for her. Idol in her pocket. Second advantage on the way. David drawing a lot of attention to his side of the alliance instead of the Loggy side of Eva, Joe, Star, and Shaheen. So I just feel like she's in a really good spot long term. And I think if people go after that duo of Joe and Eva, they'll be more likely to target Joe since her idol is public knowledge. So Eva is my winner.
All very, very fair. My winner pick is Camilla. And this is a little bit of a crazy one, because Camilla's name came up this week, but Camilla's name was not written down this week. I think that all of the drama of this week accentuated the rifts in the Milky Majority, and I think it will drive it apart. Within that, I think Camilla seeded really nicely so that she was part of the reason this break happened, but going forward, the break has happened. There's these fresh wounds. She's not the problem anymore. If you close your finger in a door and then you stub your toe, you're focused on the stub toe, right? The latest pain is the biggest one. I think Camilla is the finger in the door. She is the previous pain. I think she'll be okay. I think Kyle will be okay. And I just love their alliance, and I think they will go far together.
I agree. I think that Camilla will get less pushback for this week, but I also believe that she will receive less credit for the potential falling apart of the Milky Majority. I stand by the fact that she cannot go to the end of this game with Kyle because I'm pretty sure that Kyle will beat her just based on the type of people who are in the game and who will be going to the jury. So
yes,
I feel like if she sits at the end with him, Kyle will be the one that gets all the credit for those moves. Losers. My loser this week is David.
Me too.
This is an example of someone who won the battle, survived this week, but he lost the war. I don't see this guy winning a jury vote in most Final Tribal Council combinations at this point. The fact that Camilla says you have bad jury management feels like some very serious foreshadowing for David. So
yes,
I think in my power ranking last week, I had him at number 4. Now he's going to be bottom 3.
I don't think I have anything that harsh, but I think he's in a bad spot. I think what we saw this week with David's fixation on Camilla is that when things don't go his way, he doesn't handle it well. I think that's going to continue, and I think he's going to sort of dissolve, and we'll see what happens. So
that's a really good point, though. I feel like David has gotten his way in every tribal council that he attended prior to this week. At the Mergatory, David was the one walking onto the beach and saying, Charity is terrible. I couldn't trust Charity in the pre-merge. We got to get her out. Charity goes home. Next week, he hops in confessional and says, Cedric is an outsider. We need to vote him out. Cedric goes home. This is the first time that he's really faced any adversity on the season, and he doesn't handle it too well. Do you have an honorable mention?
I do, and I'll make it quick because I think it's interesting, but I want to focus on your dishonorable. My honorable mention goes to the impartial game. This Mario Party-ass journey challenge is based on a game called NIM. NIM is based on a mathematical concept, right? Varieties of this game have been around for a very long time. The core of a NIM-based game is you take turns picking things up, and depending on what you're trying to do, you either want to pick up the last object or don't pick up the last object. So the game this week obviously was a variant on that where you wanted to avoid each last object in turn. It was actually a really simplified version. In that context, NIM is something called an impartial game. And an impartial game is a game where the allowable moves depend on the position and not which player is currently moving. And the payoffs for each move are symmetric. What that means is that the only difference between one player and the other is whose turn it is and who gets to go first. So if you ever play a game like Tic-Tac-Toe is a game that I think falls in this category, where if you go first, you have an advantage because you get to place the first X or O. NIM is kind of like that, where if you get to take first, you're in control of the game. I just think that's an interesting mathematical concept. I think it's something where in a game like Survivor, you want your challenges to be balanced games. You do not want impartial games because that means, or maybe you do if you're production, because if you have an impartial game, you can adjust the likely outcome based on what order you make the players go in, right?
Oh,
so,
okay.
What we saw this week with Camilla and Mitch working together to beat Star, if Star had been in front of Camilla, that would not have happened, right?
Okay.
And so it's an interesting bit of game theory, and I think as time goes on, we're going to have to get more mathematical with our analysis here, and this is like some serious game theory stuff, so kind of interesting, but something to know.
I will say one thing I appreciated about the challenge is that I think this fits much better in a journey than an immunity challenge. Because if you put this in an immunity challenge, then all the players in the majority can essentially band together to make sure the people on the bottom don't win. So I think it fits better in a journey. And I think another positive of it is that it inherently reveals some of the alliance dynamics in the game. It forces you to show your cards a little bit by screwing someone else over and giving them that red ball. So there's pros to it, but there's definitely negatives as well, like you mentioned. But now time for my dishonorable mention.
Yes.
Which, for the second time this season, goes to the Survivor 50 polls. I was really excited when they announced the theme of this season. It's Survivor 50 in the hands of the fans. And I initially thought, oh, hell yeah, we'll get to vote on the cast. We'll get to pick the people that go out to Fiji. Nope, you won't get to pick that. Okay, maybe we'll get to pick from a wide number of options on the challenges or the number of starting tribes or like core game mechanics. Nope. Instead, we're voting more so on aesthetics. So this week, we're voting on the type of immunity necklace, both of which look like they come out of the Hunger Games.
So I have them pulled up. The first one looks like it has a bunch of teeth, like fangs, and then it has a big circle with a phoenix emblazoned on it. And the other one, actually, the whole necklace looks like a phoenix and I think is much cooler. But they are both very Hunger Gamesy.
So that's the first poll. Second poll is all about camp supplies. We had a poll similar to this earlier in the season. We got to vote on whether or not the tribes started with rice, which I think is really funny. I like the idea of having them start with rice, but not the pot and all the supplies that you need to actually cook it.
Oh, I like that.
So I'm pretty indifferent on that poll as well. The worst one here, and the reason why this is my dishonorable mention, is poll number 3, which asks viewers to vote on twists. And this isn't asking about a specific twist that they would include in the game, a specific kind of journey. It's just twists in general. And this means nothing to me. Like, if you're not going to give the specifics of the twists, then I can't really cast an informed vote. And I'm scared to tell production, yeah, you take the reins, put however many twists that you want, because then we're going to be basically watching Mario Party 12 on Survivor.
Yes.
So I don't know. I just feel like some of these polls have been really disappointing. When I saw the theme, the in the hands of the fans, I thought we would get to pick some really specific aspects of the show.
Yeah.
But I feel like at the end of the day, it's mostly production calling the shots, and we just have the illusion of say.
It's disappointing. Frankly, I would like a third option on the camp supplies one. I don't want them to have anything.
For the whole season, 26 days, nothing?
I want them to have a bag of rice. That's it. No machete, no pot, no flint.
Yeah, you want to see them eating that raw rice.
Maybe you get to earn flint a week in. Who knows? Maybe there's a long time to go before Survivor 50. Maybe there's something really good that they'll ask right before they film it, you know?
Oh, yeah, they're saving all the good polls for when the contestants are actually out on Fiji. Because right now, I think Survivor 49 started filming this past week. So we're about a month away from the filming of 50. And once that happens, they'll probably have the official cast leaked in some capacity, which will be pretty exciting. We've done a lot of time on this podcast trying to watch a wide range of seasons, and I'm hoping that pays off and we get to see a lot of the players that we covered come back. The worst case scenario is that there's only like one, and then we did all this work for what?
For nothing.
For what?
Hopefully next week we see a big blow up between David and Shaheen in the next time on. Hopefully things get juicy, but it might be that the milky majority stays and Mitch goes home and we're right back here next week. Thanks for bearing with us through this middling episode. We'll just call it that. Not the best. It's not the worst. It's not that bad.